The 16th of December 1991 is the date when the dreams of many generations of Kazakh people was realized. It's the date when the independence of Kazakhstan was proclaimed. The policy of the independent Kazakhstan is based on two equally important concepts: freedom and responsibility. After gaining independence and freedom, Kazakhstan undertook a historic mission. This mission was undertaken to honor the memory of Kazakh ancestors and to fulfill the duty for generations to come. 2 decades have passed since the historic moment, but we still suffer from irreversible damage caused by nuclear tests. The state will do everything possible to protect future generations from the poisoning breath of the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site. In 1945, World War II, which had taken away tens of millions of human lives, was over. No one even suspected that a new menace would threaten the world. This time, it was a nuclear menace. July 16, 1945 was the day when the USA made the first nuclear tests in the Alamo Gordo Desert, New Mexico. Just a month later, new weapons were used in military purposes against Japan. Nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The United States tried to frighten the world by nuclear weapons, the most destructive weapons in the history of mankind. A potential threat of atomic bombing of USSR cities arose. On the 5th of March 1946, in Fulton, Missouri, USA, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Winston Churchill, made his famous speech about confrontation of East and West, which formed the base of the Cold War doctrine. The world was divided into two blocks. The Eastern blocs, headed by the Soviet Union, and the Western bloc, headed by the United States. The Soviet Union was forced to accept the situation and to start the development of its own nuclear weapons. The primary task was the creation of its own nuclear test site. It had to meet the following requirements: low population density, availability of communications, water resources, and local construction materials. Of all the regions with low population density, the Special Commission chose Kazakhstan. 18,500 square kilometers on the territory of Semipalatinsk, Pavlodar and Karaganda oblasts were allocated for the nuclear test site or polygon. In September 1947, the first buildings of the military settlement were constructed. The settlement was first named Moscow 400, then it was renamed into Semipalatinsk 21. Later, the town got its new name, Kurchatov, in honor of Igor Vasilyevich Kurchatov, an outstanding scientist and the head of the first nuclear project of the Soviet Union, and became the administrative center of Semipalatinsk Polygon, nuclear test site. On the 29th of August 1949, the first Soviet nuclear bomb with a capacity of 20 kilotons was tested. In 1953, the first thermonuclear charge with a capacity of 400 kilotons was tested on the polygon. In 1955, the first hydrogen bomb with a capacity of 1,600 kilotons was tested. In the period from 1949 until 1963, ground tests, the most dangerous for human health and the environment, were made on the territory of Semipalatinsk polygon. Tens of thousands of people in Kazakhstan were subjected to the influence of nuclear weapons testing. The end of the American monopoly of nuclear weapons caused a new arms race between the USA and the USSR. The confrontation of the two blocs overcame any reasonable limits and resulted in the accumulation of tens of thousands of nuclear weapons on both sides. Mankind was brought to the verge of nuclear war more than once. The first to mention is the 1962 Caribbean crisis, when the expansive Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev made threatening speeches to the West in the UN. As a result of nuclear tests carried out by all the nuclear countries, the total background radiation on the planet increased above the normal level. Therefore, in 1963, the USSR, USA and Great Britain signed an agreement banning nuclear tests on 3 environments: above ground, underwater and in outer space. 456 nuclear tests were made on the Semipalatinsk polygon. Less hazardous underground tests were made on the Balapan and the Degilan sites in the period from 1963 till 1989. As a result of a thermonuclear explosion in January 1965, the atomic lake Chagan was formed. In the 1980s, the Soviet Union underwent the epoch of perestroika and glasnost. It was a time of changes on a geopolitical scale and the end of the Cold War. People now got information about the consequences of 40-year-long tests on the Semipalatinsk polygon. For over 40 years, the USSR military-industrial complex used the polygon territory without any compensation to the people of Kazakhstan. The last event was a routine nuclear explosion on the 12th of February 1989, which caused the release of radioactive gases to the ground surface. The cloud covered the village of Chagan, and the radiation background exceeded by 200 times the natural level. The Commander of Strategic Aviation, located in Chagan, General Mayor Pavel Predikin, informed the administration of the oblast. On the 20th of February 1989, Keshrim Boztayev, the first secretary of the Semipalatinsk Party Regional Committee, supported by Nursultan Nazarbayev, the head of the Council of Ministers of Kazakh SSSR, sent the coded message stamped Top Secret to the Secretary General of the Central Committee Mikhail Gorbachev, with a demand to reduce the frequency of nuclear explosions on the Semipalatinsk polygon and to move them to another place. On the 26th of February 1989, a famous Kazakh poet, Oljas Suleimanov, made a TV appeal about the banning of nuclear tests. On the 28th of February, a meeting was organized, and the decision to organize the international anti-nuclear movement Nevada Semipalatinsk was taken. On the 29th of August 1991, the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, issued a decree on the closure of the Semipalatinsk polygon. This decision was the first step of Kazakhstan into the nuclear-free world. Even now, many years later, the consequences of the nuclear tests are still visible. The people and the environment suffered from irreversible damage. The test caused an increase in disease and mortality in the region. In order to mitigate these consequences, the government developed a special state program with a series of measures on rehabilitation, social protection, and economic development of the region. In 1991, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Kazakhstan, having the 4th nuclear potential in the world, voluntarily renounced its nuclear weapons. In 1992, according to the decree of the President, the National Nuclear Center was formed on the base of the nuclear test site. The National Nuclear Center studies the consequences of nuclear tests, problems of the utilization and disposal of radioactive waste, and modern nuclear technology. Kurchatov has become the capital of peaceful atomic energy. In 1992, Kazakhstan signed the Lisbon Protocol on the agreement SOW1, in which it fixed its obligations on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. In 1994, Kazakhstan completed the removal of all nuclear weapons from its territory. And in 1995, Kazakhstan decommissioned the last nuclear weapon on the former Semipalatinsk nuclear test site. In 1996, the leading nuclear powers signed the agreement, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which was also joined by Kazakhstan. In September 1999, all the silos of intercontinental ballistic rockets were decommissioned in 4 regions of Kazakhstan. In June 2000, the last tunnel for nuclear tests was shut down on the Semipalatinsk nuclear site. According to the decree of the President of 4th April 2003, in order to develop peaceful science-intensive nuclear and radiation technology, the joint stock company, the Park of Nuclear Technology, was organized in Kurchatov. On the 7th of September 2005, the ex-president of the USA, Bill Clinton, who made a major contribution in the development of relations between Kazakhstan and the USA, visited Almaty. On the 8th of October 2005, the international symposium Kazakhstan, Strengthening International Cooperation for Peace and Security, was held in Usk-Kamenogorsk. This symposium marked the successful completion of a joint Kazakh-American project, which was an example of international cooperation in the field of non-proliferation and control of nuclear weapons. On the 8th of September 2006, the Central Asian republics, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan, signed an agreement of a nuclear-free zone in Central Asia. The high assessment of the world community is reflected in the fact that in 2009, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed August the 29th as the International Day Against Nuclear Tests. In April 2010, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon visited the former Semipalatinsk nuclear site within the framework of an official visit to the Republic of Kazakhstan. He commended the aspiration of Kazakhstan to the nuclear-free world as the first country to renounce nuclear weapons voluntarily. On entering the 21st century, Kazakhstan fulfilled its historic mission. It closed the world's largest nuclear test site and directed its scientific discoveries in the field of nuclear physics to peaceful objectives. The world community saw the openness of the independent state to dialogue and to the devotion of a world free of violence and military threat. Kazakhstan, headed by President Nursultan Nazarbayev, constantly pursues a policy of non-proliferation of nuclear weapons and disarmament. It has become an epicenter of peace, calling other countries to follow its example.